So, dear colleagues, welcome back. Today we will turn our attention to the last person, so to speak, spiritual founder of the West, namely Dante Alighieri. But firstly, let's turn back to the last week's seminar when we dealt with the Virgil's fourth equoque. By the way, Virgil himself will be found to be crucial for Dante's Divine Comedy. I have again prepared some questions to remind you some points of Virgil's masterpiece. So, let's go. So, the first questions: what is the main theme of this one? Yes, what is the main theme of the Virgil's fourth equoque? The main theme is the nativity of a divine child who is bringing the new golden age of peace and prosperity to the Roman Empire, which was devastated by the civil wars. The second one: what is the reason of the extraordinary popularity of the Virgil's fourth equoque in the Christianity? So, the reason was the Christianity had identified the divine child of fourth equoque as the infant Jesus. Therefore, the poem was considered as the prophecy of the nativity of Jesus. Third question: explain the identity of the divine child whose nativity is described in the Virgil's fourth equoque. The child's identity remains mysterious. Virgil is more likely to mean a particular person than an archetypal divine child. However, Virgil kept the identity of divine child hidden. The candidates seem to be descendants of Octavian Augustus, or Mark Antony, or Virgil's benefactor Asinius Pollio, the important Greek consul. So, next questions: what is the reason the prophet Isaiah announces Savior of Israel as a child Emmanuel? Isaiah is announcing the Savior of Israel as a child, and it was quite surprising and quite novelty. The ordinary perspective was the Savior of Israel should be a mighty warrior, and Isaiah has a child. So the reason for such announcing is probably to exclude the future Savior of Israel from ruin by force. The child is some symbol of archetype of innocence and also kind of powerless. It's very important. So, next one: explain the title Prince of Peace, which was attributed to the Isaiah's Emmanuel in the book of Isaiah, chapter 9. The Prince of Peace is the final title given to the Emmanuel, and the peace here refers to the Jewish term shalom. And shalom is not just the opposite of war, a temporary truce or ceasefire, but shalom includes everything that is needed to live a happy life without fear of the future. Life without fear of the future and with friendship with God. That is the reason of Hebrew word shalom. So, next one. What are the main similarities between Book of Isaiah and Virgil's fourth equoque? As some scholars have pointed out, the traditional scheme known from the Jewish apocalyptic, that is, coming of the Messiah, the outbreak of the eschatological war with the Messiah's enemies, and finally the messianic age of peace, are consciously repeated in Virgil's fourth equoque. There are also many very similar images and motifs if in both texts. For example, pictures of natural harmony, overall description of golden age, etc. So, and last one, how does the scholars, as distinguished biblical scholar Raymond E. Brown, explain the striking similarities between Book of Isaiah and Virgil's fourth equoque? Some scholars see the key in verse 4 of Virgil's equoque. That verse states, "Now there has come the last age of which the human Sibyl sunk." In this verse, Virgil mentions Cumean Sibyl, and there were so-called Libri Sibyllini, Sibylline books, which were traditionally held in high esteem in ancient Rome, and they were kept in the temple of Jupiter in the capital. These books were lost during the fire of Rome in the years 80 before Christ, and the Romans subsequently decided to renew or replace this collection of books by undertaking an extensive search for all available prophetic texts of all nations throughout their empire. It is quite unlikely Virgil to be allowed to read new collection of Sibylline's book. Nevertheless, it is quite possible that texts of Semitic or even Jewish origin were included in this new collection. This new collection was not preserved to modern era, or at least this book of Jewish or Semitic origin come to wider cultural awareness, and that was probably the channel how the ideas stated in the book of Isaiah come to the Virgil. So it's all, and now let's turn to the Dante's Alighieri and his Divine Comedy. So that is Dante depicted by the Botticelli. It's very, very famous pictures of him. So, what is the main theme of the Divine Comedy? In my opinion, the main theme of Dante's masterpiece, Divine Comedy, is the love to the dead woman. That woman named Beatrice Portinari. Beatrice had been already dead for 10 years in the time which Dante chose as the dramatic time of his poem. Therefore, she was an absolutely unhateable woman for Dante. Let's say more concerning her. Beatrice was almost sure a real woman. Dante met with her only 2 times. First time, he was only 80 years old and Beatrice 7 years old. Later Beatrice had married to rich banker Simon de Bardi and had some children, and Beatrice died 24 years old. At the time of her death, Dante was also happily married to Gemma Donati. However, he had never forgot Beatrice for his whole life, and in the Divine Comedy he fulfilled what he promised in his first book, first masterpiece, Vita Nuova, in English, New Life. If it be pleasure of him, through whom all things live, that my life continues for a few more years, I hope to write over her that which has never been written of any other woman. So, it looks very strange, even, so to speak, perverse, to love the dead woman for whole life. Nevertheless, it is essential to realize that Dante was a medieval man, and his understanding of the relationship between living and deceased was quite different than the attitude of modern people. In the point of view of the Christian faith, the Church is the community of the living as well as of the deceased. The death is not such an important event to exclude someone from such community. For the medieval people, the afterlife was the integral part of their world. Moreover, the Dante's time highly appreciate so-called courtly love, typically the love of vassal knight to the wife of his sovereign lord. Therefore, the love which can be hardly fulfilled. Although the consummation, sexual intercourse, was not excluded and occasionally used to realize, but it was not the main tenet of courtly love. The main tenet, on the other hand, was much more the frustration from the impossibility of the fulfillment. The frequent form of such love was the sublimed, mystical love to the saints, especially to the Holy Virgin, or Mother of God. In such context, I hope Dante's love to Beatrice is more comprehensible. Beatrice should be understood as Beata. It means blessed or beatified person, and indeed we will see her among the saints in the end of Dante's Paradiso, in the last canto of Paradiso, canto 33. To fully understand the status of Beatrice, we must apprehend that even though there are special rites in Catholic tradition of beatification or canonization, however, there are also the saints which had never been officially proclaimed, and their sainthood is known to God only. Dante was obviously fully convinced Beatrice was one of them, one of the such, so to speak, hidden saints. In Inferno, in the first canto of Inferno, Dante set out on the road which will lead him to the Beatrice, and he will meet her in the earthly paradise in the third canto of Purgatory. However, Dante's road will go on. In the canto of Paradise, Dante and Beatrice will ascend to the heavenly paradise up to the final beatific vision of the Holy Trinity. Dante's road will not finish before there. During his pilgrimage, Dante will go through all afterlife regions, hell, purgatory and paradise. Nevertheless, Dante's intention was not to create true or at least probable topography of afterworld, although he is highly appreciated especially for that. However, as stated by Dante himself in his letter to his friend and patron Can Grande de la Scala, the aim of his comedy is, in the first level, to describe the conditions of the souls after death, and in the second level, more allegorical level, to describe the conditions of human in the moment when he is receiving the God's punishment or rewards for his sin and virtues. I have already said that Dante's pilgrimage in the Divine Comedy goes through 3 afterwards regions: through hell, purgatory, and paradise or heaven. We are familiar with these concepts, although I guess we found only a few modern people who would take them very seriously as cosmological reality. Nevertheless, just from the fact these concepts are understandable for us, it follows we bear a spiritual and mental universe of medieval people, and it would be very difficult to get rid of it. So, Dante presents such universe in his full splendor and force. Nobody has ever been able to present it in such extent as well as in such approachability. Dante's poem is probably the most complex description of the medieval universe and deeply influenced Western thought, at least at the beginning of modern era. It is not only a description of cosmology, of medieval cosmology, but a very complex and compact structure linking together cosmological and moral order, physics and mystics, ontology and theology. Today we have not such ordered and compact vision of our universe, and I guess we can hardly even imagine it could be ever possible. However, Dante had this vision, some kind of vision. So let's glimpse onto Dante's universe and its sources. There are 3 main sources of Dante's Divine Comedy. In the first place, I have to mention scholastic, especially Thomistic and also Aristotelian philosophy. Many canti of Divine Comedy can be understood as the scholastic questiones in the form of poem. The second source, and very important, is the Franciscan Spirituality and Mystic. The founder of Franciscan order was Saint Francis of Assisi, and Saint Francis of Assisi sought to renewal of Catholic Church by the means of poverty. In the comedy, there are some hints Dante himself could be, maybe, a member of the secular branch of Franciscan order, so-called Third Order. Finally, Dante was deeply interested, even obsessed, with ancient culture, especially literature and Latin poetry. It is not a coincidence that he chose Virgil as the guide through hell and Purgatory. So, and now let's look at glimpse onto Dante's universe. Dante describes his universe by the means of Ptolemaic astronomy and Christian theology. The Earth is an immovable body in the center of the universe and consists from two completely different hemispheres. The people were granted access to the northern hemisphere. Northern hemisphere is this one on this slide. In the center of northern hemisphere, there is a city of Jerusalem with the Mount Zion. The limits of northern hemisphere are the river Ganga, or Gange on the east, and the river Ebro, that is a river in Spain, in the west. The southern hemisphere, on the other hand, consists not from land, but from water, and the people are forbidden to visit it. In the center of the southern hemisphere, there is the Mount of Purgatory. Mount of Purgatory can be seen here. And the Mount of Purgatory is just opposite to the Jerusalem's Mount of Zion. Both rivers, Ebro, Ganga, and both mountains form a stylized cross. Under the Mount Zion, the hell can be found. The hell is shaped as the cone upside down. Its top reaches the center of the Earth's globe. The hell is divided to the 18 circles, similar to the theater-style stages. There are 9 circles of hell. 5 circles form so-called upper hell, and last 4 the lower hell. The lower hell is the city, is conceived as city of red masks and walled with iron walls. The hell is cruel and horrible place. There are tombs, chasms, swamps, desert, and so on. The lowest 9th circle of hell is the dwelling place of Lucifer. The purgatory is connected with the hell by kind of gap. You can see the gap here. And this gap is leading to the base of the Mount Purgatory here. Purgatory itself is separated by guarded gate, and it is essentially a road leadings to the top of mountain and circling the mountain 7 times. So, therefore, purgatory consists of 7 levels, corresponding to the 7 deadly sins. Each of the 7 deadly sins is cleansed on the appropriate level of purgatory. There is earthly paradise on the top of Purgatory mountain. So, there are 9 concentric spheres around the Earth. 7 of them are planetary heavens. Heaven of Moon, Mercury, Venus, Sun, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. The 8th sphere is the sphere of stars, and the 9th sphere is the so-called crystalline heaven, called also the first mover. Beyond them, beyond these nine heavenly spheres, outside of space and time, there is Empyreum. There is Empyreum. Empyreum means fiery heaven in the form of white or yellow rose. The petals of the rose are the dwelling places of the souls of blessed. Divine Trinity dwells in the center, in the same center of this rose. Such is, roughly speaking, general architecture of Dante's world, structured by the numbers 1 and 3 and the shape of circle. Cosmic architecture is keeping the strict hierarchical order. The God himself is dwelling in the highest heaven, though Lucifer in the deepest hell. All ontological levels, hell, earth with Mount Purgatory, planetary heavens, are situated between them. These levels are essentially independent each another. However, the God's will and providence penetrated all of them. Whole God's creation can be understood as the ladder or staircase, in Italian scaleo, or more precisely as the golden chain of Neoplatonism. Dante is ascending on this ladder or staircase during the Divine Comedy, step by step, recapitulating in the opposite direction the act of God's creation. Dante has populated the universe of Divine Comedy with many persons, mythological heroes of ancient myth, Jewish patriarchs of the Old Testament, apostles, angels, Catholic saints, pagan philosophers and poets. However, above all, with important people of his own time, of Dante's own time, which occasionally personally met and which were both his friends as well as his foes. From that reason, the elementary knowledge of Dante's life and his milieu is an essential condition for reading and understanding of Divine Comedy. So, some word about Dante's life and his time. Dante's time was turbulent due to a continuous struggle for domination in Italy between Roman emperors and popes. Many of Italian cities, including Dante's native Florence, were at least formerly independent republic governed by elected councils. Nevertheless, inside of each city can be found two inexorable fighting parties or factions. The supporters of emperor's claims, so-called Ghibellines. Sorry, no, that is the right spelling. Ghibellines. And so, on the one hand, the supporters of emperor's claims, Ghibellines, and on the other hand, the supporters of Pope, so-called Guelphs. Guelphs. Ghibellines and Guelphs. Therefore, almost all cities in Italy were in the state of permanent civil war, although the struggles between Guelphs and Ghibellines were more often results of family quarrels or vendettas. Nevertheless, they were cruel and often murderous. However, moreover, the governments of neighboring cities usually intervened to such struggles, sometimes supporting the same faction, sometimes supporting the other. So, Dante was born in the years 1265, perhaps in the month May. His mother died in his youth. His father was a small landowner, descending from noble, however poor family. Dante's father also died when Dante was 18 years old. When Dante was born, the Florence had approximately 45,000 inhabitants. However, the radical changes in politics and economics caused dramatical demographical growth of Florence. In the years 1301, there were more than 100,000 inhabitants in Florence. And Florence became a very important business and trade center. From Dante's point of view, the rapid commercialization connected with banking and above all usury means lending money at very high interest rates, as well as moral decline of papacy were the main causes of Dante's personal tragedy, which was his expulsion from Florence and lifelong banishment, which occurred in the year 1301. Dante was a member of the White Guelph faction in Florence, and his expulsion was the result of split of the Guelph party in Florence on so-called White Guelph, which were ardent supporters of the for independence of Florence, and the so-called Black Guelphs, which try to secure Florence's might and welfare by the alliance with Pope and the French royal house of Anjou. The politics of White Guelphs meant actual threat for the newly elected Pope Boniface VIII. We can meet him in the 19th canto of Dante's Inferno, where Boniface VIII is punished for the simony. Simony means the sin of buying and selling church offices. So, the violence between White and Black Guelphs in Florence broke out in the time when Dante was elected as so-called prior, that is, one of 6 persons supreme official collegium in Florence. The violence was probably provoked by the Pope Boniface himself. Dante was a member of the deputy to the Boniface in the attempt to reconcile struggling fractions. However, during his return to Florence in the year 1301, the Black Party orchestrated the coup d'état with the support of Pope and French army, murdered the leaders of the Whites, and confiscated their property. Dante was in absentia condemned for the corruption and fraud. Hard to say whether it was on a pretext. Dante's property was confiscated and he should have been burned to death in the case of his return to Florence. Despite later amnesty, Dante never came back to his native town, traveled across Italy as author for the rest of his life, supported only his rich friends and patrons. In the time of his exile, Dante was already quite renewed writer and poet. His first work, Vita Nuova, in English New Life, was published in the year 1298, and it was selection of his poems dedicated to the Beatrice Portinari, the key character or the key person of his Divine Comedy. In the years 1304, Dante was leaving the white faction and founded the party with only one member. It means Dante himself. During the years 1310 and to 1313, Dante laid all his trust and hope to the Roman Emperor Henry VII of Luxembourg. Henry VII of Luxembourg was grandfather of it was only grandfather of Charles IV, founders of our university, of Charles University. And Dante's hoped the Henry's victory and rule over Italy could put the end of his exile. However, during the siege of Florence, Henry caught malaria and died in the year 1313. Dante dedicated to Henry's memory his treatise Monarchia, which praised the emperor as the legitimate successor of the idea of ancient Roman Empire. The Divine Comedy was written during Dante's exile, during the years 1340, when Inferno was published, and 1320, when Paradiso was published. And Dante died in the year 1321 at the city of Ravenna, where his tomb can be found. So, Divine Comedy was not written in Latin, as should have been appropriate for the poems, aspired to be a contribution to the high medieval culture. But Divine Comedy was written in Italian Tuscan dialect. Latin, in the Dante's time, Latin was the so-called lingua franca, the generally understandable language of every educated European, and also the language of the Bible, the Church, diplomacy, theology, philosophy, etc. By choosing Tuscan dialects, Dante made his work difficult for many scholars of his time to appreciate it or even understand it. However, Dante was not complete innovator in this respect, but he followed the Provençal or Aquitanian troubadours, who first began to write their poems in the vernacular or folk language since the 12th century and created a kind of new and brilliant courtly culture in southern France and the surrounding areas. So, and let's proceed with first canto of Dante's Divine Comedy. The opening canto of the Divine Comedy is regarded as a an introduction to Inferno, although the pilgrims technically enter hell only in the third canto of Inferno. And the opening canto could be also regarded as an introduction to the whole poem, to the whole Divine Comedy. The second possibility seems to be more plausible, because the remaining parts of Divine Comedy have 33 canti each, while Inferno has 34 canti. Therefore, the total number of all canti of Divine Comedy is 100. The whole Divine Comedy can be read as an autobiographical work. In the first canto, however, this moment is even more evident. This is mainly due to the fact that the character of the pilgrim, Dante, is presented and the story is set in the particular year and situation of Dante's life. So, the first canto lacks two almost compulsory parts which every serious classic poem would have contained. Firstly, the first canto lacks so-called exordium. Here, exordium. Exordium. In Latin, exordium means the beginning, and exordium of a classical poem should contain invocations of muses. The archetype of such invocation could be found in Homer. In the beginning of Odyssey, Homer states, "Tell me, O muse, of the man of many devices, who wandered full many ways after he had sacked the sacred citadel of Troy." So, the ancient conception of poetry presupposes the poet is merely an instrument through which the deity, namely the muse, speaks. It means the poem is not human, but a divine origin. Elsewhere in the Divine Comedy, Dante invokes the muses. Nonetheless, the comedy as a whole is not attributed to them. It is the work of Dante himself. In addition, the so-called captatio benevolentiae is also missing. In classical tradition, captatio benevolentiae is used to be a short passage in the beginning of poem in which the author tried to obtain the reader's favor. On the other hand, Dante goes straight to the point, and that is very unusual in the great poem. So, first part of first canto of Divine Comedy. Midway in the journey of our life, I came to myself in a dark wood, for the straight way was lost. Ah, how hard is to tell the nature of that wood, savage, dense, and harsh. The very thought of it renews my fear. It is so bitter that is hardly more so. But to set forth the good I found, I will recount the other things I saw. How I came there, I cannot really tell. I was so full of sleep when I forsook the one true way. But when I reached the foot of a hill, there were the valley ended, that had pierced my head with fear. Looking up, I saw its shoulders, arrayed in the first light of the planet, that leads men straight, no matter what they wrote. Then the fear that had endured in the lake of my heart all the night I spent in such distress was calmed, and as one who, with labor and breath, has escaped from the deep to the shore, turns and looks back at the perilous waters, so my mind, still in flight, turned back to look once more upon the past, no mortal being ever left alive. After I rested my wearied flesh a while, I took my way again along the desert slope, my firm foot always lower than the other. So, Dante, in the beginning of first canto, Dante got lost in the dark wood, which includes extensive symbolism. First of all, it is an expression of the spiritual crisis that Dante was experiencing. Later, in first canto of Purgatorium, we will see that his life and spiritual crisis might have something to do with his uncompleted suicide. By the way, in 12th canto of Inferno, self-slayers are punished also in the dark wood. Moreover, to make one's way through a dense forest is the traditional image of conquering a beloved woman in the tradition of court love. Finally, the dense forest or dense wood is also a common background or a camouflage, so to speak, camouflage, which covers the entrance to the underworld, to Hades, so in Virgil and also in Homer. It is also said that Dante got lost in the dense forest as he descended from straight path that lead to the summit of a hill. This hill is probably the Mount of Purgatory, where Dante's earthly paradise is situated, and where, as we shall see later, he will eventually meet his Beatrice. However, it seems there is no straight path to the summit. So I think it is a general human experience. The straight path to our desired goals are very rare, and moreover, they do not usually work very well. In most cases, it is necessary not to lose our grip and hope and hold on, as Dante. So, Dante got lost at the time midway in the journey of our life, as stated in the first verse of first canto. We can deduce that Dante was probably 35 years old, because the normal life expectancy and at Dante's time was about 70 years. We can compare the Psalm 90. The days of our life are 70 years, or perhaps 80 if we are strong. Dante, however, died in the town Ravenna in the years 1321. At the time, he was only 56 years old. Therefore, his prophecy was not fulfilled. Dante does not say in the first verse of Divine Comedy, my life, but our life. It could mean this passage and the whole poem, whole Divine Comedy, as well, could be concerned to everyone, not only Dante. And it is, as it were, an anthropological testimony. In the introduction, we can find the motive of sleep and dream, as in verse 11. I quote, I was so full of sleep when I forsook the one true way. In my point of view, the Divine Comedy should be read as a record of inner experience. It is primarily a dreamlike or ecstatic vision of a heavenly journey of the human soul. Such dreamy, visionary or ecstatic experiences are called usually altered states of consciousness, and they are not such extraordinary as it could seem to be. Anyone is able to experience them, for example, in the state of deep sleeping, heavy drunkenness, or intoxication of LSD or something similar. However, only a few are able to fulfill such experience, such altered state of consciousness with culturally relevant content and to communicate it in the high aesthetical style. This is already very special and only geniuses, as Dante or Plato or perhaps John of Patmos, the author of Apocalypse, were able to do that. Finally, the motive of shipwreck is presented as the second and parallel symbol of the life crisis. In the verse 22, Dante says, and as one who, with laboring breath, has escaped from the deep to the shore turns and look back at the perilous waters. The symbol of shipwreck carries very complex symbolism, namely relates Dante to the two most prominent shipwrecked persons, to the Saint Paul, the Apostle on the one hand, who, according to Book of Acts, chapter 27, shipwrecked on his travel to the Rome, and, on the other hand, the Aeneas, the hero of Virgil's Aeneid, Virgil's famous epos Aeneid. At the same time, both Paul and Aeneas are the archetypes of pilgrims to the afterworld. Paul was raptured to the third heaven, and Aeneas descended to Hades in the book of Aeneid. The 6th chapter of the book of Aeneid. At the same time, so we will see the Dante identifies himself, especially with Saint Paul, more and more in the course of Divine Comedy. So let's turn our attention to the second part of first canto. The second part of first canto. But now, near the beginning of the steep, a leopard, light and swift and covered with a spotted pelt, refused to back away from me, but so impeded, barred the way, though many times I intend to go back down. It was the hour of morning, when the sun mounts with those stars that shone with it when God's own love first set in motion those fair things, so that, despite that beast with gaudy fare, I still could hope for good, encouraged by the hour of the day and the sweet season, only to be struck by fear when I beheld a lion in my way. He seemed about to pounce, his head held high and furious with hunger, so that the air appeared to tremble at him. And then a she-wolf, who, all hide and bones, seemed charged with all appetites that have made many live in wretchedness. So weighed my spirits down with terror, which welled up at sight of her, that I lost hope of making the ascent, and like one who rejoices in his gains. But when the time comes and he loses, turns all his thought to sadness and torment. Such did the restless beast make me, coming again me, step by step, and roll me down to where the sun is silent. So, in my commentary, while in the first part we have encountered several complex symbols, the second part of first canto is allegorical. Allegory shows the meaning of a certain real story through some other fictional story. Each feature in a fictional story corresponds to a feature in the real story. Allegory replaces and substitutes. It is a whole chain of metaphor, so to speak. Here, Dante was seeking to get out of the dense wood, that is, to overcome his life crisis. And his path was crossed by three beasts, a leopard, lion, and she-wolf. In Italian, there is a nice alliteration, Lonza, leone, et lupa. It is apparently an allegory. However, the problem is we don't know how this allegory should be interpreted. Maybe it should be an allegory of triple division of hell, or foreshadowing of what Dante encounters there. Some commentators argue that a she-wolf is a sin of lust, a lion, the sin of violence, and the leopard, sin of deceit. Why leopard could be a symbol of deceit? No, so because leopard skins is colorful, like the body of Geryon, the guardians of 8 circle, that is circle where the deceit or fraud is punished. However, in my opinion, a wolf as the symbol of lust doesn't make much sense. It knows the traditional symbol of lust. So another possibility, this allegory should be an allegory of deadly sins without any allusion to the structure of hell. Some commentators say that the leopard should be lust, lion pride, and she-wolf lechery. In my point of view, it could be more probable that first option. And finally, it should be an allegory of Dante's enemies. A leopard would be the Dante's enemies in Florence, the lion, the royal court of France, and the worst of all, the she-wolf. That is, the she-wolf could symbolize the Roman papacy. The wolf is the very ancient symbol of Rome. In my opinion, this explanation of allegory is the most probable. So, at the same time, several astronomical hints are given that allow to informed reader to determine quite accurately the date on which the Divine Comedy takes place. It is important the poem does not take place in some mythical timelessness, in Latin in io tempore, but the poem is situated near of Eastern. Therefore, Dante associates the poem with the sacred time of this Christian holiday, the sacred time of Eastern. The astronomical hint in verse 37 states, when the sun mounts with those stars, then shone with it, when God's own love first set in motion those fair things. So, this verse refers directly to the spring equinox, to the beginning of spring on March 21st. The spring equinox is an important day for three reasons. In the medieval astrology, it was assumed 21st March was assumed as the day of the creation of the sun. So the first sunrise occurred in that day. The second one, the spring equinox, is celebrated as the feast of Annunciation. The feast in Annunciation is the feast when the Archangel Gabriel comes to the Holy Virgin and say her that she begotten a son. So the feast of Annunciation is the feast of conception of Christ. 21st March the 21st, is the 9th month before the Christmas. Before the time when the Christ was born. And at the same day, at March the 21st, the beginning of the new year used to be celebrated in medieval Florence. So, and finally, the spring equinox determines when Easter is to be celebrated. The celebration of Easter is the first Sunday after the first full moon after the spring equinox. The very convincing argument that Dante's journey is taking place at Easter is the information Dante receives in the 8th circle of hell, when he has to bypass a collapsed bridge. In 21st Canto of Inferno is stated, yesterday, at a time 5 hours from now, it was 1266 years since the road down here was broken. So, it is quite enigmatical expression, but it is allusion to the earthquake that occurred at the crucifixion of Jesus Christ on Good Friday, according to Matthew's Gospel. Since the journey to the 8th circle lasted 2 days, the first full day of Dante's stay in hell is necessarily the 1266th anniversary of Good Friday, and therefore Dante began his trip on day earlier, namely on Monday, also called Maundy Thursday evening. According to church tradition, Jesus descended to the hell after his crucifixion, and so did Dante in his Divine Comedy. Dante's ascent from hell will begin on Sunday Easter morning. That is precisely at the moment when Christ's resurrection used to be celebrated. On Monday morning, Dante and his guide, Virgil, will arrive on the shore of Purgatory Mountains, and on the Wednesday, on 12 o'clock, Dante and Beatrice will begin to ascend from earthly paradise at the top of Purgatory Mountain to the heavenly paradise. Therefore, the whole journey takes exactly a week. According to the old tradition, Christ was 34 years old at the time of his crucifixion. That is necessarily to add the number 34 to 1266 years from the statement above, from the statement in Inferno 21st of It give us the year 1300. According to the church calendar, in the year 1300, Sunday Eastern was celebrated on April the 10th. It follows Dante begins his pilgrimage at April the 7th after dusk and ends it at the noon April the 13th. Most scholars accept this chronology. If that chronology is right, then Dante's spiritual crisis has nothing to do with his expulsion from Florence, which took place a year later in the year 1301. So, let's then to do rest of first canto. While I was fleeing to the lower place, before my eyes a figure showed, faint in the white silence. When I saw him in that vast desert, "Have mercy on me, whatever you are," I cried, "whether shade or a living man." He answered, "Not a man, though once I was. My parents were from Lombardy. Mantua was their homeland. I was born sub Julio, though late in his time, and lived at Rome under good Augustus, in the age of false and lying gods. I was a poet, and I sang, the just son of Achilles come from Troy, after proud Ilion was put to flame. But you, why are you turning back to misery? Why do you not climb to the peak that gives delight, origin and cause of every joy? Are you then Virgil, the fountainhead that pours so full a stream of speech? I answered him, my head bent low in shame, O glory and light of all other poets. Let my own study and greed laugh avail, that made me delve so deep into your volume. You are my teacher and my author. You are the one from whom alone I took the noble style that has brought me honor. See, the beast that forced me turn back. Save me from her, famous sage. She make me veins and pulses tremble. It is another path that you must follow, he answered, when he saw me weeping. If you would flee this wild and savage place, for the beast that moves you to cry out, lets no man pass her way, but so beset him that she slay him. Her nature is so vicious and malign, her greedy appetite is never sated. After she feeds, she is hungrier than ever. Many are the creatures that she mates with, and there will yet be more until the hound shall come who will make her die in pain. He shall not feed on lance or urk, but on wisdom, love, and power. Between felt and felt shall be his birth. He shall be the salvation of low-lying Italy, for which maiden Camilla, Julianus, Turnus, and Nisus died of their wounds. He shall hunt the beast through every town, till he has sent her back to hell, whence primal envy set her loose. Therefore, for your sake, I think it wise you follow me. I will be your guide, leading you from here through an eternal place, where you shall hear despairing cries and see those ancient souls in pain, as they bewail their second death. Then you shall see the ones who are content to burn because they hope to come, whenever it may be, among the blessed. Should you desire to ascend to these, you will find a soul more fit to lead them. I leave you in her care when I depart. For the emperor, who has his seat on high, wills not, because I was a rebel to his law, that I should make my way into his city. In every part he reigns, and there he rules. There is his city and his lofty seat. Happy the one whom he elects to be there. And I answered, Poet, I entreat you by the God you did not know, so that I may escape this harm and wars. Lead me to the realms you've just described, that I may see the St. Peter's Gate, and those you tell me are so sorrowful. Then he set out, and I came on behind him. So, that is the end of the first canto, and let's give some short commentary of that part. In the moment of deepest despair, Dante meets his guide Virgil. Apparently, Virgil has been waiting in the dark wood for some time. Virgil will guide him through hell and purgatory as far as to the threshold of earthly paradise. But he will see that he cannot continue further because Virgil is a pagan. You have already known that Publius Vergilius Maro was a great Latin poet, the author of Fourth Echoque and also the author of Aeneid. He was born in the year 70 before Christ, near the town Mantua. It is not so far from Florence, and died in the year 19 before Christ. He has been writing his epos, Aeneid, for 11 years. It is heroic epic poem based on Homer's Iliad and Odyssey, and tracking the Romance origin to the Troy. According to Virgil, Aeneas, the main hero of Aeneid, and the Trojan heroes are the true ancestors of the Romans and therefore the true ancestors of all Europeans. Aeneid was an important text of the Roman imperial propaganda. Virgil is the master as well as the author for Dante. Author means the one who has authority, one who has influence on someone and is able to influence or shape his opinions. So, the last great riddle of the first canto, however, is the symbol of a hound, which is supposed to defeat the she-wolf, and scholars disagree about the meaning of these symbols. Some scholars assert it is a poetical prophecy, the coming of politician or an emperor or a king who will solve the political problems of Italy and bring the peace to Italy. On the other hand, some scholars regards it as a religious prophecy, a hint to the second coming of Christ. Hound could be a symbol of Christ because the hound is noble and faithful dog. But in my point of view, it can be both. The most likely candidates for this hound are, on the one hand, Can Grande della Scala, the leader of the Verona Ghibellines, descendant of noble family, who offered shelter to Dante during his exile. Moreover, Can means in Italian dog or hound. The other, and in my opinion the more probable candidate is the Emperor Henry VII, on which Dante reposed his political hopes, namely his hopes for return to his native forests. In the first canto ends with Dante's strong determination to set off on journey to make, I quote, to make my way into his city. So it is stated in verse 126. This city, as we shall see, is the rose of Empyreum, the home of saved souls. However, Dante will have to go through the hell and purgatory first. So, dear colleague, about the entrance of Dante to the hell, we will deal with on the next week. So, it is all for today. I wish you a nice week and see you next Tuesday. Bye bye.